Elijah Brooks had never performed for a crowd larger than a few dozen commuters. At 17, his world was a mix of subway tunnels and secondhand instruments. He had no fancy equipment, no social media strategy, and no manager, just a cracked keyboard, a passion for music, and a deep desire to be heard. Every weekend, he took the train from the Bronx to Midtown Manhattan, setting up near the 34th Street Penn Station entrance. People walked past him like he was invisible. But he kept playing, letting the music fill the corners of the underground. It was his way of surviving. Elijah had grown up without his father, and his mother was serving a sentence at Bedford Hills. Raised by his Aunt Rochelle, he found in music the voice he never dared use in conversations. He didn't play for money, though he kept an open backpack by his feet. He played because it was the only time he didn't feel like a shadow. On a chilly Saturday afternoon, Elijah chose to perform God's Plan by Drake. He'd always felt something special in that song, a tension between pain and hope, struggle and triumph. As he played the chords and sang softly into the cold air, something in the crowd shifted. People began to stop. One man pulled out his phone and started recording. A child stood silently beside his mother, watching Elijah as if he were witnessing magic. Elijah didn't notice the attention at first. He was lost in the music. His eyes closed, his fingers dancing over worn keys. His voice trembled on the high notes, but there was something raw in his tone. Something real. His version wasn't polished or produced. It was personal. It was honest. And it was exactly what that subway needed. When the song ended, the clapping startled him. A dozen people stood nearby, applauding softly. Some smiled, others wiped their eyes. Elijah offered a small, shy smile and nodded. "Thanks," he said, almost under his breath. It wasn't until he packed up and checked his phone that he realized what had happened. The man with the phone had uploaded the video to TikTok, and it had already gone viral. In just hours, the video surpassed 100,000 views. By nightfall, it hit 1 million. Elijah was trending. Not because of a gimmick, but because his rendition of a popular song had connected deeply with people across the country. He wasn't just a teen with a keyboard anymore. He was the subway kid who made people feel. Comments flooded in. "I cried watching this. I needed this today. Who is he?" Elijah couldn't believe what he was seeing. Rochelle hugged him and said, "Baby, people are finally hearing you." But Elijah wasn't ready for what came next. Because one of those views belonged to Drake himself. Late that night, as Elijah lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, a notification popped up on his phone. A verified account had sent him a message on Instagram. It was short, but it changed everything. "Heard your version. You made it yours. Respect. Drake." Elijah froze. His heart raced. He reread the message 5 times, unsure if it was real. Rochelle had to come into his room and read it with him. "You better reply," she said with a grin, "but don't fanboy too hard." Elijah laughed, still shaking. He typed back, "Thank you. This means the world. I just sing what I feel." He hit send. And with that, his life was no longer the same. By the following morning, the story had been picked up by major outlets. "Teen's soulful subway rendition of God's Plan moves millions," one headline read. Elijah didn't know how to process the attention. He still rode the same train, wore the same hoodie, and ate the same cereal. But now, strangers were calling him a star. "I'm not famous," he kept saying. "I just played a song." He went back to the subway the next day, hoping to stay grounded. This time, a crowd was already waiting for him. Phones out, lights on. Applause before he even touched the keys. It was overwhelming. He played anyway, trying to ignore the pressure. But something had changed. The subway no longer felt like his quiet space. It had become a stage. That night, another message came from Drake. This one was longer. He said he was in LA, working on a mentorship program for young artists, and wanted to fly Elijah out for a session. "No pressure, just studio time. Let me know." Elijah showed Rochelle. "Is this real life?" he asked. She nodded, eyes misty. "He sees something in you. Go show him more." A week later, Elijah was on a plane for the first time. He clutched his keyboard case like a shield. Everything felt surreal: the airport, the hotel, the black SUV that picked him up. When he arrived at the studio, Drake greeted him with a handshake and a warm smile. "You good?" he asked. Elijah nodded. "Nervous." Drake chuckled. "Good. That means it matters." The studio wasn't flashy. It was cozy, intimate. There were other artists there too. Poets, singers, rappers, each with a story. Drake explained that the space was meant to be more than just music. "It's for truth," he said. "We don't just make hits. We make healing." Elijah felt like he belonged immediately. When it was his turn, he played Window Bars, a song he'd written about visiting his mom in prison. The room went silent. Even Drake closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. The emotion in Elijah's voice cracked through the beat. When he finished, no one spoke for a moment. Then Drake said, "That's the kind of song that changes people." They recorded it properly that night. Drake offered guidance but never took control. "Keep it yours," he reminded. Elijah soaked in every second. He wasn't just learning music production, he was learning how to trust himself. And for the first time, he saw a future in music that didn't require him to sell his soul. Over the next few days, Elijah worked on more songs. Each one was a reflection of his reality. The Bronx, his mother, his pain, his hope. The team loved it. Drake loved it. But more importantly, Elijah loved it. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was trying to stay honest. And in that honesty, he found strength. When the trip ended, Drake gave him a hug and said, "You have a gift. Protect it. Don't let the industry mold you into something you're not." Elijah nodded. He didn't have all the answers, but he had direction now. That meant everything. Back in New York, Elijah returned to the subway. Not to go viral again, but to play for himself. The crowd was bigger, sure. But he played with eyes closed, remembering every word, every lesson. And deep down, he knew. This was just the beginning. Elijah's return to New York felt different. The subway, once a refuge, had become a shrine. People recognized him. Some asked for photos. Others just nodded in quiet respect. But fame didn't interest him. He still lived in the same apartment, still ate budget meals, and still checked on his aunt every evening. What mattered to him now was using this moment for something bigger than himself. He began teaching at the local community center twice a week, not formal classes, just sessions where neighborhood kids could play instruments, write lyrics, or simply talk. Some came from shelters, others from broken homes like his. Elijah didn't preach. He listened. He told them what he wished. Someone had told him, "Your voice matters, even if it's shaking." One of the kids, Jamal, reminded Elijah of himself, quiet, angry, and full of questions. Jamal didn't want to sing. He wanted to rap. And when he did, it was raw, unfiltered. Elijah didn't censor him. Instead, he taught Jamal how to channel pain into precision, how to hold silence like a note. The transformation was slow but visible. Elijah knew. Sometimes the most powerful music begins as a whisper. Meanwhile, his song Window Bars gained traction. A local radio station played it. Then another. Soon, blogs were calling it the most honest track of the year. People resonated with its stripped-down pain. Not everyone knew the full story, but they felt something real. And that was enough. Elijah, however, refused to commercialize it. "This isn't for profit," he told his producer. "It's for peace." Drake stayed in touch, checking in now and then. Not as a mentor, but as a friend. "Keep the fire, kid," he texted. "But don't let it burn you." Elijah took that seriously. He began journaling more, reflecting more. The fame didn't scare him, but losing his center did. So, he stayed close to the Bronx, to Rochelle, to the streets that raised him. A documentary crew approached him, hoping to follow his rise. He declined. "Not yet," he said. "The story's still being written." What he did allow was a short local interview where he credited the community for everything. "I didn't do this alone," he said on air. "The train station sang with me. The city listened. The city healed me." One day, while walking to the community center, he noticed a mural on a brick wall. It was his face, painted beside the words, "Don't wait to be heard. Speak anyway." Elijah stood there for a long time, moved. He didn't know who painted it, but it felt like a thank you. From the city. From the people. From every kid who'd ever felt invisible. Rochelle saw the change in him. "You smile. More now," she said one morning. "You're lighter." Elijah nodded. "I think I've found my place." But even then, he knew. This was just one chapter. The real test would be what came next, sustaining truth in an industry that profits on fantasy. So he kept playing. In the studio, in classrooms, in subway corners. His fingers carried stories. His voice carried weight. And above all, his presence carried hope. That even a broken piano, when played with honesty, could sound like a choir. And that was something no chart could ever measure. Months passed. Elijah remained consistent. He dropped a second single, Backstairs, inspired by eavesdropping on arguments through thin apartment walls as a child. It wasn't a hit, but it struck a chord with fans who craved vulnerability. He started gaining followers who weren't just fans. They were survivors, writers, dreamers. Then one evening, while preparing dinner with Rochelle, his phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" he answered. "Hey Elijah, this is Rachel from The Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon's team wants you as a guest." Elijah blinked. "Me?" The voice laughed. "Yeah. You." He dropped the spoon into the sink. Rochelle covered her mouth. "This ain't a prank?" It wasn't. A week later, Elijah flew back to LA, not to record, but to perform. Fallon's producers asked him to sing Window Bars. Elijah agreed, but only if they kept the lighting dim and allowed him to play live, no backing track. They hesitated. He insisted. "I'm not here to impress," he said. "I'm here to be real." The night arrived. Elijah stepped onto the stage, heart pounding. The curtain lifted. The audience hushed. He sat at the piano, took a breath, then played. No theatrics, no flash, just the truth. As he sang, people leaned forward. His voice cracked once, but it only made the moment more powerful. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Fallon approached, visibly emotional. "That," he said, "was something else." Elijah smiled, shook his hand, and exited the stage. Backstage, Drake sent a text. "You just baptized TV." Elijah chuckled. It felt surreal, but deserved. The next day, the performance went viral again, but this time, it wasn't about novelty. It was about honesty. Critics praised his restraint. Fans shared stories of how the song helped them open up to loved ones. Therapists quoted his lyrics. Teachers played the clip in classrooms. Elijah had become more than a viral sensation. He had become a voice. Back home, Rochelle greeted him with tears. "Your mama would have lost it," she said. Elijah hugged her tightly. "She'll see it soon," he whispered. And indeed she did. The prison allowed inmates to watch the performance. His mother sent a letter. "You gave my pain wings," she wrote. Elijah cried reading it, then framed the letter. Beside his keyboard, opportunities came flooding in. Brand deals, album offers, collaborations. Elijah turned most of them down. "If I can't keep my soul, I don't want the money," he told his agent. That frustrated some execs, but it endeared him to fans even more. He was the kid who said no to fame and yes to truth. With the money, from streaming and a few speaking gigs, Elijah renovated the community center. Built a better studio, bought new instruments, hired instructors, called it the Echo Room. His vision was simple. A space where young voices could become their own salvation. And so, the Subway Kid became something rare. An artist who grew without selling out, who led without ego, and who proved that sometimes the quietest voices leave the loudest echoes. Behind every word Elijah sang, there was a deeper wound, one that rarely made it into interviews. His mother, Dominique, had been incarcerated for nearly 6 years. Caught in a system that punished addiction rather than healing it, she was a bright, complicated woman who fell through cracks no one tried to seal. Elijah rarely spoke about. Her in public, but in private, she was his rhythm. They wrote letters every week. She knew about the Subway performance, about Drake, about The Tonight Show. "Baby," she once wrote, "don't let my cage stop your flight." He kept that line in his wallet, folded and worn. It reminded him of the line between pain and purpose, and how he had chosen to walk it barefoot. Through a legal aid initiative and good behavior, Dominique became eligible for a reintegration program. Elijah met with her caseworker, prepared statements, and even spoke at a local justice reform event. "She's not just a number," he said on stage. "She's a mother, a woman, a human being who slipped and didn't get a hand back up." Eventually, Dominique was transferred to a halfway house. It was the first time Elijah saw her without a thick pane of glass between them. When she walked through the community center doors, he was teaching Jamal how to loop a beat. He stopped, mid-sentence. Their eyes locked. "Mom," he whispered. She ran into his arms. They cried together, surrounded by speakers and notebooks and broken keyboards. Dominique stayed quiet during her first visit, absorbing the place her son had built. She listened to the kids rap, watched Elijah teach, and later sat on a worn couch in his apartment, staring at old photos. "I missed too much," she said. Elijah replied, "You're here now. That's what matters." And it did. More than either of them could express. She became a volunteer at the Echo Room. Not in music, but in life. She helped with snacks, coordinated transportation, and even led a weekly group called Letters We Never Sent, where teens wrote letters to parents, real or imagined. Her past didn't make her weak there. It made her necessary. Still, some people judged. Rumors circulated. "That's the Subway kid's mom," others whispered. Elijah heard them. So did she. But they stood tall. "We don't run from what we've lived," Dominique told one of the girls. "We sing louder than the shame." That became a motto, painted on a mural near the recording booth. For the first time in years, Elijah felt whole. Not because everything was perfect, but because the missing pieces had names, faces, stories. His mother, his aunt, his students, his city. They were all part of his composition, and he had only just begun writing the chorus. The Subway hadn't created Elijah. It had revealed him. But it was these people, flawed, fierce, and unfiltered, who helped him stay true. That, he realized, was the real God's plan. As Elijah's name grew in the music world, so did the pressure to conform. Industry veterans offered deals filled with fine print and big promises. They wanted him to tour, to collaborate with chart toppers, to repackage his image. "Let's get you in a slick video," one executive suggested. "Maybe lose the piano. Add some edge." Elijah smiled politely. "I'm not a product." Some couldn't believe he walked away from multi-million-dollar offers. "You're making a mistake," they warned. But Elijah saw it differently. "The world's loud enough," he told Rochelle one night. "I just want to be a voice of stillness." She nodded. "Then be that, loudly." He focused instead on growing the Echo Room. It became a creative sanctuary, not just for kids, but for Elijah himself. He wrote an EP called Glass Ceilings, 5 tracks, each inspired by conversations from his workshops. One about a girl who never knew her father. Another about a boy too scared to come out. Every lyric was born from someone else's silence. The EP received critical acclaim, not because it was flashy, but because it told the truth. NPR featured it. Schools requested it. A university professor called it a masterclass in emotional clarity. Elijah didn't celebrate. He went back to the studio and kept recording. "This ain't about applause," he said. "It's about permission. For others to feel." Meanwhile, Jamal got his first feature on a local podcast. His voice, once shaky, now held swagger. Dominique co-authored a piece on the power of post-incarceration support. Rochelle began mentoring other caregivers. The ripple effect was real. Elijah wasn't the only one rising. He was lifting others as he climbed. Drake returned for a visit. Quietly, no cameras. He sat in a circle, at the Echo Room, listened to kids recite poetry, even dropped a freestyle. Afterward, he pulled Elijah aside. "You built a world, man," he said. "Most artists build careers. You built a damn ecosystem." Elijah smiled. "I just followed the sound." Still, not all feedback was kind. Some said he was wasting potential. "You're preaching to the choir," they claimed. Elijah responded once in a tweet. "If the choir's been silent too long, maybe they need the mic more than the stadium." The tweet went viral. But more importantly, it resonated. In a private journal, Elijah wrote, "I don't want to be famous. I want to be unforgettable, in the ways that heal." That became his compass. Not metrics, not money. Meaning, always meaning. And so, while the industry played chess with trends, Elijah played piano. He didn't need a throne. He had a keyboard, a cause, and a community that echoed every note. As demand for Elijah's presence grew, so did the stakes. He was invited to headline a major charity concert at Madison Square Garden. At first, he declined. "Too much," he told his team. "Too shiny." But after learning it would benefit youth mental health services, he reconsidered. "Only if I can bring my people on stage," he said. The night arrived. The venue buzzed with anticipation. Elijah wore his signature hoodie and jeans. No stylists. No dancers. Just him, a grand piano, and a group of teens from the Echo Room standing behind him as a choir. "We go together," he told them backstage. "Always." He opened with a stripped version of God's Plan. As his fingers found the keys, the crowd quieted. But the magic wasn't just in the music, it was in the presence. Behind him stood stories that had once been silenced. Now they sang, boldly. The setlist included Window Bars, Backstairs, and 2 unreleased tracks. One, Open Door, was about forgiveness. The other, Bronx Gospel, was a love letter to his neighborhood. Between songs, Elijah spoke softly. "This isn't about fame," he said. "It's about faith, in what music can still do." The audience rose to their feet, not for theatrics, but for truth. Elijah looked out and saw faces of all ages, all backgrounds. Some cried, some danced, all listened. And in that moment, he felt something sacred, not celebrity, but connection. After the show, media outlets praised the performance. A masterclass in vulnerability. The concert we didn't know we needed. But Elijah ignored the headlines. Instead, he stayed late, thanking the janitors, hugging students, and whispering thank you to the empty stage before he left. That night, Dominique cooked dinner for everyone at home. Jamal played beats on his phone. Rochelle teased Elijah about his stage presence. And for a brief moment, it felt like a family. One made of resilience, rhythm, and redemption. And even as the world applauded, Elijah knew the most important stage he'd ever step on was still the subway floor, where it all began. Because some performances never end. They just keep echoing. Years passed. Elijah never left New York. He toured a little, released music on his terms, mentored hundreds. The Echo Room expanded, donations poured in, but the mission remained unchanged. Offer truth, space, and voice to the unheard. He published a memoir called Chords Between Cracks. It wasn't a bestseller, but it found its readers, teachers, mothers, prisoners, preachers, people who lived between the lines. It became required reading in some schools. Honest like a heartbeat, one critic said. Jamal became a producer. Rochelle opened a program for teen caregivers. Dominique received a community award for advocacy work. Elijah watched them all bloom. "We're not survivors," he once said in a speech. "We're composers, writing futures where silence used to be." One evening, he returned to the subway where it all began. No cameras, no crowd, just him and his old keyboard. He played God's Plan again. Slower, older, wiser. As the notes rang out, a young boy stood nearby listening. Elijah smiled. "You play?" he asked. The boy nodded. Elijah handed him the keyboard. The boy played shyly. Offbeat, unsure. Elijah nodded. "Sounds like a beginning to me." And with that, he walked away, leaving behind the echoes, the city, the story, knowing that somewhere, someone would pick up the melody. Because real songs don't end. They continue in the hearts they reach. And Elijah Brooks had reached many. Had been nearly 10 years since Elijah's subway performance changed his life. Yet, in many ways, he remained the same. Grounded, reflective, loyal to the community that shaped him. Fame never diluted his mission. If anything, it sharpened his focus. The boy who once sang to survive had become a man who taught others to sing so they could live. The Echo Room had grown into a network. There were now locations in 5 boroughs, each equipped with studios, counselors, writing rooms, and open mic nights. Elijah refused to franchise it. "This isn't a business," he reminded investors. "It's a lifeline." His foundation supported hundreds of youth each year, prioritizing those impacted by incarceration, poverty, and systemic neglect. But Elijah had one last personal goal: to return to the same subway platform, not for a show, not for a moment, but to pass the torch. He organized a quiet event, inviting young musicians from all over the city. No press, no announcements, just a circle of instruments, storytellers, and the heartbeat of a city ready to listen. That night, he arrived early. The familiar smell of metal and motion greeted him. The tiles were chipped, the air heavy with underground heat. It felt perfect. He sat at a small keyboard, much like the one he used a decade earlier, and waited. One by one, the kids arrived. Nervous, hopeful, bright-eyed. Elijah welcomed each of them with warmth. They played their songs, some polished, others raw. They rapped, they cried, they laughed. Elijah didn't perform that night. He only listened. And when asked why, he replied, "I already had my turn. Tonight's about you." The moment was symbolic, powerful, and utterly unforgettable. Later, a girl approached him, maybe 13. She held a notebook to her chest. "Mr. Elijah, how do I know my music is good enough?" He knelt beside her, smiled softly, and said, "If it makes you feel something real, it's already enough." Good. Music tells the truth, even when your voice shakes. As the event ended, Elijah stayed behind, cleaning up cables and folding chairs. Alone on the platform, he played a quiet tune, improvised, gentle, full of gratitude. A single commuter paused, recognizing him. "You're the kid from the video, right?" Elijah looked up and grinned. "Not a kid anymore." The man smiled. "Still sounds like magic." In the years that followed, Elijah published a second book, scored a film, and became a guest lecturer at universities. But he never left the Bronx. Every Friday, without fail, he visited the Echo Room to lead a workshop. "Fame fades," he often said. "But presence, that lasts." And when he finally stepped back from the spotlight completely, he left behind no monument, no statue, no greatest hits compilation. What he left was louder, a generation of young artists who believed their pain had purpose, their words had worth, and their silence could become song. Because in the end, Elijah Brooks didn't just play God's plan, he lived it, one note at a time.